And welcome into another episode of Tiger Territory, part of the Foul Territory Network, a Detroit Tigers podcast. I'm Kieran Steckley. With me, as always, is a man that no cloud outage can break. He is Cody Stavenhagen. How you doing?
Didn't break me. I didn't know there was a cloud outage until you started telling me your Google Chrome wasn't working. So it was all good on Safari over here. Everything was running smoothly.
Yeah, running smoothly. And speaking of smooth operations, we're recording this Tuesday about 6:30 Eastern time. And as far as actual tangible things, the Tigers have had a smooth offseason, I guess you could say. Jack Flaherty opts in or exercises his option, whatever the correct terminology is there. And then just breaking news ish from a couple hours ago, Cody. Gleyber Torres has accepted the qualifying offer, a hair over $22 million for the 2026 season. So we had gone back and forth on this about from both sides about the merits of extending, the merits of accepting, and all that stuff. Now that it's official, what do you think from Torres's perspective? Kind of this came down to for him to decide to stay in Detroit another season.
Yeah, were acting like it was a hard decision. I feel like it most likely was not that hard of a decision. Now, it sounds like Glaber's agents did their due diligence and kind of shopped around, maybe talked to some teams. Hey, what, could we get our boy 4 years? And it doesn't seem like it never felt to me like he was going to have suitors for that type of deal. I think the Athletic was projecting him to get somewhere in the 3 year, $45+ million range. I thought 360 was kind of his absolute ceiling for if a team that really liked him and really wanted the plate approach. But I had a hard time seeing him getting that sort of offer he wanted. I think there's upside for him to return because you're probably going to make more money in 2026 than you would any other way you cut it. And you come back with a chance to raise the ceiling for your value. If you want to make 100+ million, get yourself 22 this year and maybe see if you can get 4 for 78 next year. I think that is not impossible. There's a little bit of a risk. Everyone's worried, will there be a labor stoppage? Will players miss time in 2027? So Gleyber does take that gamble a little bit, but he's going to get paid a lot. And also, I think anyone criticizing Scott Harris for this is way off base. Gleyber per Fangraphs was worth about 20.6 million last year. That was with a sports hernia that plagued him greatly in the second half. Maybe you're paying a little bit above market, but if Gleyber went to free agency saying, I will take a 1 year deal, I think he would get more than the 15 million he got last season. I don't think this is like above market. I think you bring back a quality hitter who has good leadership presence, who does a lot of good for your team. We'll get into the ramifications and the downstream effects of this a little bit later. But for now, I think this makes a lot of sense for both parties.
Yeah, like the way I look at it is there's a certain comfort level with having a Gleyber Torres in your lineup and at second base ish. Yeah, we understand the defense, but like at the top of your lineup from the right side of the plate, there's a comfort level of knowing like a floor for your expected offensive output that was really not going to get replaced if he declined this option. Like you were not going to uh you were not going to fill the Gleyber Torres role like as it's designed with anyone but Gleyber Torres. You were going to have to kind of reimagine how you did how you did your lineup, which there's a lot of infield options out there that they could have figured it out, but this is something that feels a little bit more natural to how the Tigers want to kind of build around. And and I agreed with the logic that it made sense for him to come back, all that stuff that you laid out, but the history of it, and this is something that other people just nationally have talked about, the history of accepting the qualifying offer is not great. And so and we had, I would assume, a record number of guys do it
4.
this year.
There were
Yeah.
14 since 2012, and there were 4 this year. So some of that I think is just circumstantial. You had guys like Brandon Woodruff and Gleyber Torres where it just made sense. The Trent Grisham one surprised me a little bit. Some of it, I think maybe guys, we're seeing teams really don't like to pay guys that have the qualifying offer attached. It seems like that's become a little more clear in recent offseasons, so I think that plays a role too.
All right.
And again,
And
Gleyber, you can only get the qualifying offer once, so Gleyber will go to free agency next year with no qualifying offer attached, which should, in theory, help his market.
There you go. I mean, that's that's also a really good note. So let's dive into sort of like a winners losers deal from Torres coming back, and the a winner at the top of the list here for me is Torres, Gleyber. He comes back to a familiar situation. I think that's valuable for a guy who's looking to get a next payday or whatever. He comes into a it's a winning situation. It's a team back to back in the DS in the American League, so that's good. And also he gets roughly a 50% pay bump. So I've yet to do that in my career. So good on him for getting that. I'll throw Javi Baez in there as a winner, Cody, because we know that they're boys. We know that they have a good off and on field connection, and Javi will be a factor in the 2026 Tigers, kind of to be determined, and we'll kind of go through that a little bit too here in a second. But good for him to having one of his guys on there. It's a team full of young dudes, and I'm sure Javi likes having someone that's near 30 on the team that they can relate to a little bit more, which again, that's another thing too. I meant to mention earlier, like last episode when we had Austin on, we talked about all the young at bats by 25 and unders. That was, that was something I wasn't necessarily prepared to stomach with another young one, which we'll get to in a second. And then also this might be a little bit of a Tigers culture win. Because I mentioned Jack Flaherty. You have Gleyber Torres decide to come back. I don't think either one of those guys do it with bad cultures. I know there's financial ramifications. I know there's all these other factors. But this is something that Scott Harris and AJ Hinch has repeatedly laid out as to what they want the team to be and what they want to be known as, a place that you can come, succeed, and get better. And these are, in the case of Flaherty, a third time technically, these are two guys that twice decided, 3 times in Flaherty's case, to come back, to come and buy into this culture. So I think those are winners there, and such a simple operation from a transactional standpoint. It's not really like a lot of losers, but I think you got to throw the McGonigle thing in here, Cody, because the cleanest path to McGonigle making the roster for opening day felt like him playing second base. Now that spot is occupied by a guy that AJ Hinch said at the end of the season would fight him, probably somewhat joking, if he ever took him out of the lineup. So now it is a more muddy situation there in terms of figuring out a path for Kevin McGonigle and / the prospect promotion incentive structure there. I'm on record as saying I don't really think that should be like handicapping your operation from a major league team because, again, we just talked about all the young guys. A lot of guys come and struggle. You got to win Rookie of the Year. It's pretty hard. So anyway, those are my winners and losers. What kind of sticks out to you from all that?
I thought you said content creators were losers too.
Content creators are losers, which we'll expand on that here in a second. We can't put ourselves first, Cody. Let's get the team first, and then we'll talk about the content creators.
All right. Well, I'll hold off on the thought about what it means for Bregman and all that. I think all your points are valid. The culture, I mean, sure. They just came back because they love Detroit, right? Like Scoob will probably give the Tigers the old whole hometown discount, right?
Yeah. Yep.
No, economics rule decision making, but coming back to a place these players felt comfortable isn't nothing either. I think you're very much right on McGonigle, which we'll also get to. I don't think it excludes him from making the opening day roster, but the path and the whole puzzle gets even harder, even more complicated. That's kind of what I keep saying. As good as the Gleyber Torres return, I think, is for the 2026 Tigers. It makes fitting together the rest of the puzzle, or the puzzle that Tigers X would probably like to see be the opening day roster, makes that a little bit more difficult.
All right. We are going to get to some other ramifications and why Cody and I are kind of losers of this Torres decision and what it's going to mean for us in the offseason. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Holiday shopping season is here, and we have you covered from head to toe.
Let's talk about an area that's not quite close to the toes. Let's get crazy with this holiday season. Yeah, that's MeUndies I'm spinning around, but the holiday season, now you can get MeUndies with some holiday prints on them.
That's right, ridiculously soft fabric holiday prints, matching holiday prints with your special person, or you can coordinate PJs for the family photo. And right now you can get up to 50% off with the code FOUL. We rock MeUndies. You should too. We're talking over 30 million pairs sold. Knock out all your holiday gifting needs today with MeUndies to get exclusive holiday deals up to, yep, I said it, 50% off. Go to MeUndies.com/foul and enter promo code FOUL. That's MEUNDIES.com/FOUL. Promo code FOUL for up to 50% off.
All right, coming back here. So, I had not to make it all about me, but I had like notes about like, all right, how are you gonna replace Torres? Here's like option A, option B, option C. Like let's hash this out. He accepts the qualifying offer, and all that work is for nothing. So, content producers, we could have done episodes after episode about like how to reshape this infield, and now it's at least half. Seems like it's already kind of in place. So in a way, we are losers for that. But the real question is, Cody, the Bregman stuff is money. Like that's kind of a pun there, where for content and presumably what his contract will be. Are we going to be out of? I say we, as in you and I doing this podcast. Are we going to be out of the Bregman speculation sweepstakes with this move? The Tigers bringing back Torres at just over $22 million.
I would love nothing more than to be out of the Bregman speculation sweepstakes. It's been one of the most all-consuming storylines ever. No, I don't think we necessarily are. I mean, I think that's, or at least that's the single most interesting question, right? Does the return of Gleyber Torres mean the Tigers aren't going to go after Alex Bregman or maybe any other big-ticket free agent infielder? That question's out there. And in an attempt to answer that question, I tried to draw out the ideal Tigers Twitter lineup. Maybe not the ideal, but a lineup that has Gleyber Torres, Alex Bregman, and Kevin McGonigle. So this is kind of a rough sketch, but here's what something could look like against right-handed pitching. Gleyber's playing second. Bregman's playing third. You better be comfortable with Kevin McGonigle playing a lot of shortstop. That's a little bit of a question. But if you are, here you go. Here it is. What that means, you're going to have to take a player you like off the roster. Maybe a Jahmai Jones, a Winsel Perez, a Matt Vierling, a Parker Meadows, Trey Sweeney for sure. But then you look at what this looks like. I'd recommend clicking on YouTube if you're able to. Gleyber Torres, Kerry Carpenter, Alex Bregman, Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, Colt Keith, Dylan Dingler, Kevin McGonigle, Parker Meadows. That's kind of a nice lineup against right-handed pitching. I look at this, I'm like, well, yeah, they could do it. You'd have McKinstry on the bench. He wouldn't play as much, but could still help out. Javi in a utility role, probably what he's best suited for. Jake Rogers, and then Matt Vierling or someone else in a reserve role. Kind of like it. So it's not necessarily impossible until you start thinking, what does this look like against left-handed pitching? There are certainly some questions, most notably, like who's going to DH. For this purpose, I put Gleyber at DH, and you could have McKinstry play second, where he played only 6 games, or McGonigle. I don't have McGonigle starting against lefties. Maybe he could. The moral of this story, you're going to have to do a couple things you are uncomfortable with, I think, against lefties. And again, this roster, I don't have Jahmai Jones on it. I think in an ideal world, Jahmai Jones had an 8, what was his final OPS against lefties, like 890 or more? I don't even remember. I know it was really good. He's not on this roster. So that's a little bit of, I don't know if it's a problem because you got Alex Bregman, but the more I look at this, I'm not sure the Tigers would be willing to part with a Jahmai Jones or option a Winsel Perez simply to accommodate McGonigle. So the answer, as I look at this, they could certainly sign Bregman. But the chances of Bregman and Kevin McGonigle both being on the opening day roster, I think take a sizable hit with the return of Gleyber Torres. So then it's like, how convicted are they in McGonigle? Would they still put McGonigle on the roster and not go sign anyone else? Or would you just be content to leave McGonigle in the minors for as long as it takes? Maybe even leave him there until very late in the season so he remains prospect promotion incentive eligible. That's a little bit of a gamble, I think. And then there's also the question, is Bo Bichette maybe a more natural fit because he can play shortstop, which is a bigger need? Do you feel good he can play shortstop? I think that question certainly comes into the fold too. You could still go get Bregman, but he might not be the most natural fit in terms of trying to construct this 13-man roster where everyone gets usage that we've become accustomed to in Detroit.
So Jahmai Jones, for the record, had a 970 OPS versus lefties.
So I don't think he's going to be off this roster. I don't think Scott Harris is taking him off the roster.
Well, okay, so that's the thing. That's the thing. I hope it's a lot better to see if you're watching this on YouTube. I know we plug that a lot, but it really does give a good visual aid. I just am not in favor. Right now, I'm just not in favor of forcing McGonigle on this roster. Does that does that make me like a bad baseball mind?
No, I think it makes a lot more sense now that we have some clarity on Gleyber.
And he has not played in AAA.
Yeah.
And all these lineups, and I've seen some people say everyone's got to get comfortable with the idea of he might be your mostly everyday shortstop or whatever next season, which again, if he earns it and he's ready, I'm good with it. But if you're going into the season saying oh, we got to find a way to get McGonigle on this roster, I just how we just went through a long rebuild with all these highly touted prospects, and they all, to some extent, some greater than others, struggled when they get to the major leagues and have to face major league pitching, especially when major league pitching adjusts to them. And now you're sort of sacrificing a little bit of ideal roster construction to put McGonigle on the major league roster for the I don't know, dude, 8% chance that he wins Rookie of the Year. You know what I mean? I just feel like that just doesn't mesh well with how I deem seriously trying to go contend and win a division.
Yeah.
It advance further in the playoffs than you have the previous 2 years. And this is nothing against McGonigle. I've been as excited about him since they drafted him as anybody. But right now, I just don't think it makes major league sense to force him on the opening day roster. If he earns it, he earns it. But this assumption, I just think that's too far. The stakes are too high. I guess that's what it comes down to for me. The stakes are too high to just have to have him on the roster. That's how I look at it.
I don't think we should underrate the defensive aspect of it either. The Tigers did somewhat show when they signed Gleyber last year that infield defense is not their top priority. It sure seems they value outfield defense way more than they do infield defense, which makes sense. You're talking doubles and triples as opposed to singles. But if you're up the middle is Kevin McGonigle and Gleyber Torres, you are defensively weak up the middle. Even if McGonigle is able to man shortstop, no one thinks he's going to be plus there. You're hoping he's good enough to play there. And Torres is a minus at second. I mean, the same could easily apply with Bo Bichette, who was one of the worst defensive shortstops in the league, if not the worst this past year. But especially with a young player and trying to make him fit on this roster. And I'm not saying he shouldn't be on there. I'm just saying as I spell this out, I feel worse about it than I did before I wrote out that roster.
Right. And another thing too, when it's one of those things that I'm glad you did the exercise, and I'm glad that you're talking about it, because doing physically writing it down or typing it, we live in a digital age, typing it out, it actually makes you kind of have to make those decisions that the Tigers brass has going to spend the next several months
I don't have Winslow
making
Perez on this roster. Winslow Perez was really good. Winslow Perez hit third for the Tigers in a winner go home playoff game. So
yeah, exactly. And I'm not even we could critique this till the cows come home. It's like, whoa, what do you think about this thing? The point is, tough decisions will have to be made, including the Jahmai Jones and Perez. I don't think anyone's going to sweat over Trey Sweeney, but like, how much do you trust Matt Vierling? Like, there's all these things that we could go through, but at the same time, there's if you insist on, you can't insist, in my opinion, on these two things. You can't insist that the Tigers spend on a Bichette or on a Bregman this offseason because the Tigers have the ability to spend money and they should, and insist that McGonigle, with all of 0 AAA plate appearances, is on this major league roster for the off shot that he earns you an extra first round draft pick. I just don't think those two things are compatible right now. If you want to say, look, the Tigers are all about developing young guys, so it's better in the long term to bring up McGonigle and pass on the Bregmans and the Bichettes, that's okay. I'm cool with you having that lane. I just don't think you can straddle it here. That's just how I look at it.
does that relate at all to what happens with one Tarek Skubal?
I mean, I feel like everything relates to Tarek Skubal, does it not?
Right.
Take care of Bregman. Boris, feels a little bit better about dealing with this new version of Tigers brass. Which Jeff and I should mention that Jeff Passan did put in his little notebook. I say little, it was a long notebook, that the Tigers will, I believe, the quote was, rejoin the fray for Bregman services. So that's obviously of note. And then when it comes to Skubal and trade market stuff, it's still the same, where it's no one really knows if they are actually interested in trading him, but they might if there's some great offer. So there's your contractually obligated weekly Skubal trade market update, Cody. So I'm glad you brought it up so we could get that out of there.
Yeah, I think another thing to consider when talking about hitting, I think maybe this offseason, it's what is the equivalent of the Gleyber Torres move? Something no one really saw coming, something a little bit outside the box. I don't think we should forget that the Tigers seem to like that stuff. So maybe there's another out-of-the-box solution with this lineup. I wonder, maybe especially on this pitching staff, I would keep an eye out. Is there something we're not thinking of? Is there a starter you could convert to a closer type? Or is there a reliever? I've seen a lot of relievers, Michael King being one of them, Seth Lugo, others, convert to starting with great success in recent years. Well, maybe instead of paying some guy $1 bajillion, they'll identify someone they could make a creative decision like that with. I think that's a thought we should start chewing on a little bit more.
Yeah, and again, I tend to believe if you're allocating resources, money, payroll, all that stuff, I would rather kind of get creative and possibly cheaper, for lack of a better term, with pitching, given what the Tigers have in the front office and the coaching staff, than with position players, specifically hitters, because I just feel like there's a little bit more of, you kind of are who you are with these guys that hit free agency.
Maybe so. I guess we should talk about these other 40-man moves, because that's kind of relevant there. Remember in the 2024 playoffs when Jason Foley and Sean Gunther were massive components of your bullpen? They were both
guys
now off the roster, as is Alex Lang. Bo Brisky's still probably hanging on by a thread on the 40-man, which is at 40. The Tigers protected 5 guys from the Rule 5 draft. That's Trey Cruz, Hao-Yu Lee, Eduardo Valencia, Tyron Lorenzo, and Jake Miller. I viewed Lee and Lorenzo as locks. Don't rush to conclusions. Wait for the whole news to come out, because people are acting like they were going to be off it. That was never the case. Trey Cruz, a mild surprise. I think he had a really nice year to put himself back on the map. He's a versatile player. Certainly seems like a type the Tigers really like. But would someone else have taken him? I don't know. Eduardo Valencia, kind of similar, had a terrific year, was an elite minor league hitter, but he's a catcher who's really probably better suited for first base. Is he really going to play in the big leagues? Is he worth a 40-man spot? Would someone else have taken him? I think that was a hard call, so it seems to me like a vote of confidence in Valencia that he made this. And then Jake Miller, probably a guy who hasn't been talked about enough, along with Andrew Sears, probably part of the next wave of pitching prospects and Troy Watson, who might be primed to impact the major league team next year. So all deserving. And then the guys DFA'd, Doug and Darnell, 2 first names, two last names, whatever's going on there.
Too
Our
soon.
friend is far too soon. Jack Little, too soon. Tyler Madison, Tanner Rainey. So, but the thing to note here is the 40-man's getting pretty full. I think the Tigers are going to bring in a starter, multiple relievers, maybe one more position player. Like, that's probably at minimum. So you have some more difficult 40-man spots ahead. Chase Lee, Bo Brisky. Who else is kind of at risk as we move forward?
But we haven't really talked about Andy Ibanez.
Andy, I would consider very likely to get non-tendered, unfortunately. And it's getting to the point where, like, how long is Jahan and Jace Young safe? You know, guys who once upon a time were the future. Suddenly they're a little bit at risk. Bailey Horn, probably, hanging on a little bit. Drew Summers. So interesting decisions ahead on all fronts.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that. I was pleasantly surprised that Trey Cruz got added, because that's a guy that, you just look at his baseball reference page. He's obviously been through it. He turns 28 in July, Cody. He is not young. So, like, this makes me think there's like a plan for him where they envision him, playing a part in the 2026 season. Obviously, Lee is also, someone that figures at some point like to be one of the first names to get called up. And then, our boy Tyron Lorenzo, I would say a lot of the shine is off him from a prospect perspective, but the upside is too great. You just don't want to give up that lottery ticket or take a chance of giving up that lottery ticket. So it all kind of tracks there. And then, like I said, it's all pitchers there that are DFA'd, because this is kind of the game. This is how
the Foley one surprised me more than Alex Lang a few days ago.
I would agree
for
with
sure. I mean, Foley, I think, was good for a longer stretch, had better command, was a massive, massive part of your bullpen during a playoff run. Don't have the full information regarding his health. They really missed him, but a shoulder injury. I would assume they just weren't feeling great about his recovery or how able he would be to return to form, especially they're going to have to pay him a little bit more via arbitration. But still somewhat surprised in that one. I guess speculation, but I'm going to say it's probably a reflection of whatever's going on with his shoulder.
Yep. So we'll see, if any of these names kind of pop up again in our path or in with some other teams or whatever. So yeah, I'm curious about Trey Cruz. I'm curious about Lee. We didn't even talk about him as being a potential loser of the Torres situation, because that takes away potentially like a competition spot for him. So we'll see. A lot of faith in Gleyber Torres. We didn't really talk about how he was first half, the second half. Everybody kind of knows. Hopefully the hernia thing will be behind him, and like I said, now the lineup feels a lot more complete, and you don't have to kind of extend yourself with moves this offseason. So we'll see. We'll see if they're what they do with some of the other bigger fish in free agency, because I think they're capable of it, and maybe this becomes somewhat of a I want to say all in, but like. We're tired of being Game 5 of the ALDS reaction. So we'll see. We'll see, Cody.
All right, we will see. I don't know. I just don't think they're gonna totally change their ways.
Right.
Just because they made the playoffs 2 years in a row. That's kind of my prevailing thought.
Trust the process. Don't fall in love with the process, as I always say. All right, you can follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Cody Stavenhagen. I'm at Kieran _Steckley, pod page at Tiger Territory _. Please subscribe on YouTube so you can follow along and with all these great graphics that Cody puts up, and really helps the experience, I would say. And then go to TigerTerritoryShop.com for all your Tiger Territory merch needs. So for Cody Stavenhagen, I'm Kieran Steckley. Everybody have a great day.